Hey guys, this is Chris, your friendly neighborhood mechanic. I am going to be going over the importance of why parents need to show their children how to properly maintain a vehicle and how to change tires. The past 6 months, I've probably had to help 4 to 5 people, and a lot of them have been into their mid-20s and not knowing how to even find their spare tire in their vehicle. I'm also a professional transport driver, and I picked up cars alongside the road, and I will also be going over the importance of this information to let you guys know what to do so you don't get stuck on the side of the road. But if you do get stuck on the side of the road, I will show you what you guys need to do and how to safely do it. Okay, we are going to be going over 2 vehicles here. I've got a 2009 GMC Sierra 1500 with a 5.3 liter V8 over here. To our right, I have a 2014 Chevy Cruze with a 1.4 liter turbo motor. What I'm going to be doing on these is showing you where to locate your fluids, what fluid you're going to be putting in, and why they go in. Okay, the reason why I'm demonstrating 2 vehicles is because each vehicle is going to be different, and you guys need to know when you open up the hood things to be looking for. This car is going to be a little bit different than my truck when it comes to the power steering. This car has an electronic power steering, where my truck was a mechanical pump setup. This one, I can't check power steering fluid. But this one, as you can see here, you have where you put your oil. It states on these newer cars the oil that you need to put in them. Older vehicles, you could mess with them a little bit, but I'm talking antique ones. Each vehicle has a specific amount of oil that has to go into the car. Here's your dipstick to check your oil. And as you can see, that has got a little tip on it. And up here, you can see the oil color coming all the way up to the tip of it. That indication from there to there means it's 1 quart of oil. So if you're down any level in between, it's telling you there's you've got your quart low, half a quart, 3/4 of a quart, your quart low. And when you're checking them, you'll pull the dipstick out, you'll look at one side and you rotate it to make sure your oil is on the same side as the other one, because your oil, some vehicles will have a different level and a different angle that the oil sits on it. Okay, in each vehicle you're also going to be looking at a brake fluid reservoir, and this one is sitting a little bit low. On the cap, it'll tell you a specific fluid to put in it, and this one is calling for DOT3 fluid. And here on the reservoir, it's going to have it has a minimum mark and it has a full mark, and you need to fill it back up to where you're running at the full mark. Now we'll go to antifreeze. Each vehicle takes a specific antifreeze. There are some antifreezes that are a mix with any color, but when you put antifreeze in, you need to make sure if it's a different color that they are 2 compatible colors to put together. If you mix a wrong color together, you will turn the antifreeze into jello, and you will ruin your motor, and then you'll be in $5,000 worth of problems. Batteries. Batteries last about 4 to 5 years. You need to check them to make sure that they're still good. This battery was put in last year, so this battery, we still got some time left to go. Washer fluid goes here on this vehicle, as you can see by the washer fluid sign. This vehicle, there is no checkpoint for the transmission. So when you can't find a transmission dipstick, and they'll be something kind of similar to this, some of them will be, most of the time they're red. And this vehicle, since it isn't here, this is what we like to call as a dealer check item, where they usually put it up on a rack and have to go underneath it to check. Okay, now here we look at the trucks, and you can see there's a lot more open area. This one here, as you look into the motor compartment, you have your engine oil dipstick, and this one here is what we like to call the transmission oil dipstick. This one here, when you pull this out to check a transmission fluid level, this one needs to be running, and it has to be at operating temperature. Here on the dipstick, I don't know if it's readable for you guys, but it says check and park, engine idling, transmission must be hot, and it will tell you the fluid that's got to go into it. And the fluid right here is on the back side is Dextron 6 is what has to go in this one. When you are checking your transmission dipstick, it's got this range here for hot and cold, and through there, but when it's hot, a transmission is checked in pints, not quarts. The engine oil is checked in quarts, so when this is low from the hot portion, that's 1 pint or half a quart that needs to be added. Now for the oil dipstick, the differences between the two, as you can see with the other one to this one, that there is no big ball on the bottom of it. But this one is set like that. I had just drove my truck over here, so my oil is a little bit off. I'm gonna clean it, I'm gonna put it back in, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like when it's an offset dipstick. As you can see, now that that's gone, and it's kind of a little bit, you can see a little bit of the oil on that side where you're having residue from the pipe that you've pulled out. But as you can see from that, I'm a quarter of a quart low, so I could put a quarter of a quart into this. Back over to my brake fluid reservoir. This one also says .3, as can be seen on the top here. And this one, I'm a little bit low, so it's telling me my brakes on this one, I've gone down a little bit. So as you wear your brakes, this fluid level will drop. When you go get new brakes, as mechanics, when we do everything, we'll compress everything, put them back. This reservoir will fill back up with the new brakes that are put on. Here is what we like to call the power steering fluid reservoir. As you can see, a steering wheel. You can twist this and take it off. And here, just like the other one, it'll have a hot and a cold mark to it. And since my truck was cold, let's see, where's the cold? There we go. It'll say full cold and full hot. You will check this when the vehicle is off. This vehicle is an easier vehicle to demonstrate what the serpentine belt looks like in a vehicle. This belt right here is what we like to call a serpentine belt. They used to be able to check them just by doing a pressure check or a twist right here to do a test, but there's some tools that you need to check them now. What you can do is you can look at the inside of the belt and you can see cracking. If there is a lot of cracking, even just in a 1-inch mark, if you see more than 8 cracks in through here, look at getting yourself a new serpentine belt. When these belts break on the road, you're stuck. And sometimes when these belts break on certain vehicles, it can actually ruin the top half of the motor, just with the way that the motor's designed. So very important to keep track of this also. What I'm going to be demonstrating now on these two vehicles is how to properly put a jack underneath these vehicles, where they need to be placed specifically for these cars, or for any car in general. They are what we like to call in the mechanic world a unitized car, where every single piece is welded together to make the structural stability of the car. When we go to change tires, always make sure to put your emergency brake on. Front wheel drive cars, as soon as you pick one wheel up off the ground, they have a limited slip differential is what they call it, so one wheel will spin, and as soon as both of them are picked up off the ground, your car's gonna roll. So always make sure you got an e-brake, and if you are able to have something that is placed on the back side of the car for a wheel stop, is great. So one of the new things that is going on with new cars nowadays is when they put the kits together, and these kits are found in the back of your vehicle, and as this one has never been taken out, but this one is a safety stop. So you'll put it together like that, and you'll put it underneath the back wheels, and that adds as an extra brake so the car cannot roll backwards on you. As a mechanic, on these ones specifically, I always like putting one this direction, and then I like putting one the other direction on the other side of the tire so the car can't roll forward or backwards. Today, I'm not going to be demonstrating this on the vehicle because I know I've got a good emergency brake in the car, and these brakes will hold for what I'm going to be doing. Okay, so after I've taken the spare tire out of the trunk on this vehicle, this is sitting underneath the spare tire. Now that can change per vehicle. You're going to need to find out what is going on with your vehicle specifically. This one has never been taken out of the container, so we've never had a tire problem, and that's because of staying on top of tires. When we get over to the tire, I'm going to show you guys another little trick to let you know if you have a good tire or a bad tire. And I'm not talking about putting a penny into the tread to show Lincoln's head with tread depth. Okay, these items in the back of the vehicle do not come together. One could be sitting on one spot, some can be in a compartment. These ones were both this one was right by the tire, where this one was right underneath the tire. Now, what I was talking about, how to know if you've got a good tire or a bad tire, is this. When they manufacture tires, they have to stamp a 4-digit code onto the side. The 4-digit code on the side of the tire is right here, and it will tell you the week and the month that the tire was made. And this tire was made let me back up. The week and the year is what I meant. This tire was made the 8th week of 2018. Tires are only good to 4 to 5 years depending on the adhesive used. When you go past a 4 to 5 year life limit on a tire, even if you still have good tread, you run the risk of having a tire separate and blow out and having a really bad accident on the side of the road. So underneath the car, here on the driver front side, there is this little notch that you can see right here. There is a specific point to put the jack underneath the car here. If you fail to put it on the proper spot, you will crush the underneath side of your car. And as you can see, that divot that they have in here, when I come back out and we look at this scissor jack, you can see that divot right there in this jack, where this jack was specifically designed for the car right there. Sometimes the equipment that is given with the car is not very good. I just recently had to change a tire for 2 young teen boys that were trying to use the equipment that came with the car, and the equipment failed. So always make sure to go get yourself a star wrench for one of these. This is what they call a tire iron. Before I pick the car up off the ground, I'm going to break my lug nuts loose, because when you get it up into the air, the tire is going to freely spin and you can't get the lug nuts off. And as you can see, all I'm doing here is just breaking them and not taking them off the car. One of the biggest mistakes you can do is take a lug nut off, and if the car shifts, this is going to fall off and the car can fall on you. That's one thing you do not want happening. I've had friends where that has happened before. I will come back and I will use the original tool for the car to get it up. Again, I was going to put it onto the right side, but I've got to push down. Remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty. You can have it that other direction, or you can keep it straight. Trying to get things going quickly, having it straight makes things go a little bit faster. Now, as you can see, this car is starting to lift up off the ground. Pay attention to see when your tire comes off the ground, because you don't want to lift a car too high up, just enough. But when you do have a spare tire, you're going to have to lift it up higher than what you need. To pick up our tire iron again, we're going to go to the lug nuts and take them off the car. This is why I like having one of these in here and just along with my vehicle, because it's going to be a lot faster than the original tool that comes with the car. Make sure you keep track of your lug nuts. You lose one, it can cause big problems. Last lug, and as soon as we get this off, I'm going to have to pop the tire loose and I'll take it off the vehicle. And each tire is going to be a little different. I always like grab it from the top and do a shake and then roll it off. And as you can see, I barely had that even off the ground. When you go to put tires back on, having it just off the ground is nice sometimes, because when we're trying to reline up your studs, which are right here, to put your lug nuts back on, trying to rearrange it can be a pain in the backside. If you look how I'm positioned right now with my feet at the tire, you can use your feet as a leverage point instead of picking up with your back and arms, because you get to big tires, it can be quite a pain in the backside. And my pattern's off a smidge. Back on. Take your lugs, put them in individually. This will keep the tire from falling off. And I can go right there. I'm going to come back to my tire iron again and find my 19 millimeter, and I'm going to put this one on the top one, get it started, and you can see it directing the tire as it's going back on. So now that the tire has been put back on the vehicle with one, I have not cranked it down. I'm going to do a star pattern through this one, and I'm not going to tighten them down just yet. The reason why we don't just put a lug on and do a complete circle around it, you're wanting to change your pressure as the tire's being put on, because if you do it on one side, the tire can actually get lopsided and not go on properly. So just putting it on in a star pattern, make sure the tire's adjusting this way, this way, this way, this way, and this way. Okay, so what I'm going to do here now, this last one is going to spin it. And where you can see that the tire's still kind of, it's rocking a little bit. It's kind of locked in place because of the other tire on the other side. Now, if this car wasn't chalked or have that emergency brake on, with that tire being over there, this car could roll forwards and backwards, just like I said. As you can see, it's free float. So I'm going to go back to where I started, and I'm going to go a little pressure. I'm going to follow my star pattern around, little pressure, little pressure, and little pressure. Now, these cars have a specific torque specification that the lug nuts need to be put on. Since this rim is aluminum and steel is harder than aluminum, you can, if you put too much pressure on, you can damage your rims. But for purposes being of changing a tire to get to someplace safe to get a new tire put on, once you get it back down on the ground, you're going to go back over and you're going to give it a good snug and a good tight fit. And you'll see what I mean when I start going through it. I'll put some decent pressure on it. Now that the tire has been put back on, I'm going to come back over here to the jack. I'm going to do a lefty-loosey, and I'm going to start bringing the car down. We've almost got this tire back down on the ground. As soon as we get it down, as you can see, when we had it in the styrofoam piece, it wasn't all the way collapsed. So keep in mind of what you pulled out is how it has to go back in. I'm also going to show you here on the tire, there is a specific spot you got to look at to see what amount of air your tires are asking for. Now, the amount of air your tires are asking for can be different compared to what the vehicle recommends a tire pressure. Now, when a vehicle recommends a tire pressure, that is going for ride comfort. When you put full air in the tire, say if it's a truck, if you're towing something, you're going to want to have the max air pressure you can in it with the tire being cold. You don't want to drive on it. That's what they call by a cold air pressure. Now, here on the sides, you will find writing. And this one here, it says a max tire pressure and everything right through here. And these tires call for 44 PSI, which on this car we found that it gets better mileage with the higher the air you have in it, which doesn't always happen that way. Now we're here at my truck, and as you can see, I have my star wrench, I've got my bottle jack, which is what this one is called, I've got my tire chocks, and I've got the original equipment for putting the jack underneath the vehicle to raise it, and for the lugs. This truck is a little different. My tool that I have does not meet my lugs, so I have to have a star wrench to get it off. Again, it's your responsibility to make sure you have the proper equipment to work on your car in an emergency situation. Now, with being a truck, these are the tire chocks. I am a lot more cautious when it comes to a truck because this truck weighs almost 3,000 pounds more than that car does. I have been run over by a vehicle and it is not a fun experience. Taking my tools that came with the truck, as you can see, these ones go together to let me spin and other things. Now, here in this truck, the spare tire is underneath the bed, and you have to find the place to be able to drop the tire out of this. That, for this truck, is specific right here. You can see that there's a key slot in there. You take your driver or the ignition key, you put that in there, twist it, and you pop it out. This tool has a little hook in it, and it's slotted, as you can see. That end's going to be going into this hole, and it's going to go in, and you're going to spin this to drop your spare tire down. After you're done dropping the tire, take the tire off, you can put the bad tire back in there, or as I like to do, throw it into the bed of the truck so it's quick access. You are going to want to go back in and bring that cable back up that holds your tire in place so it's not dragging on the ground, because you will ruin it. After you're done, make sure you put your key back in, lock it, close the door. Before, I'll take one of the chocks. That side, the slope side, goes towards the tire. Place it there. Now, you can come over to the other side and place it on the other side, or you can place it back on this other side so the truck really does not roll, which I'm going to do for time purposes because it's quicker to undo it on the side of the road when it's like that. So you can see the tire has now been chalked, both sides. When you get to the underneath side of a truck, they're a lot different than a car because they're fully framed, which means they build a frame, the tires go underneath that frame, and the body components and the engine go on top of the frame. And this right here, which runs the full length of the truck all the way down, is the frame of the truck. Now, you look on here to where you can best place your jack to lift up your vehicle. Sometimes placing the jack directly underneath a lower control arm, if I can get to it, it's maybe a little easier to see, but that's what your tire is hooked to right through here. And it's getting dark, and you can see on that bottom side, that's what we like to call the lower control arm. I'm going to break the lugs loose on this one so I can get this set to go, and you can see this one's on a little bit harder than the other one was. I ended up placing that jack underneath the lower control arm, so instead of having to pick the body up and have a lot of play, it's directly underneath the tire. So as I lift it, it's going to lift the truck and the tire up at the same time. Now, as I've got my tool and everything in, you can probably see a little bit through there where I've got everything set. I'm going to take this and get it into where it needs to be, and I'm going to spin it. There we go. Lock it in place and spin. And you'll see the truck slowly start lifting up off the ground. Now these conditions are ideal, and when you do this out on the side of the road, you're gonna have anything but ideal conditions. You're probably gonna be on the dirt and other stuff. And I will start telling now, when you're doing this on the side of the road, you wanna push yourself off as far as you can get yourself, because the closer you are to traffic, the easier it is that you're gonna get hit. I know plenty of tow truck drivers that have been off the side of the road that have been hit, or their trucks have been hit. Another thing to keep in mind, the law states that if there is a vehicle with flashing lights on or emergency lights, anything, it is your responsibility to slow down and move over. That is the law. If you do not do that and the highway patrol sees you, or a law enforcement sees you, they can give you a hefty ticket for failure to move for a vehicle that's in distress. Barely have this tire up off the ground. These bottle jacks right here are very unstable. So pushing a vehicle or rocking it in a certain direction can actually roll the vehicle off. Another important thing to make sure you only have the tire up off the ground as much as you need. Now, since this tire is a full tire and I'm only doing a demonstration, I have it just barely up off the ground. Again, when you have a spare tire and a flat, you're gonna have to pick the vehicle up off the ground to meet that spare tire's height before you can get that spare tire on. So don't take the bad tire off until you have a pretty close proximity to where you can have that spare tire go on without having to do a whole lot of continuous lifting back on the vehicle. See, this tire has 6 lugs on it compared to the car. That is a difference of being able to carry more weight. We are still gonna do a star pattern on this when we go to put it back on. I still haven't taken the tire off. I'm gonna take it off and I'm gonna put it back on, and then we'll drop it down and then we'll do the safety on it and we'll put the equipment away. Nuts are off the truck. Again, I've broken the tire loose and I'm just gonna bring it off. This tire is a lot heavier than that car tire. I've taken the tire off, as you can see. I'm gonna go back on. I'm gonna put this one on a little bit different possibly, because I sometimes roll these with my knee to get them up. Sometimes with these bigger ones, rolling it with the knee can be a little bit easier. Not always. When you get to semi tires, those are a royal pain. Now, as you can see, with being a 6 lug, you're asking yourself, how am I gonna do a star pattern on this? Easy. You're gonna do it like that, where you're gonna go that, that, that. Then you go opposing side, that, that one, or this one. You can change the pattern either or, just as long as you're following that basic design is what you have to do. Okay, I'm gonna go back in and I'm gonna do that pattern. As you can see on this one, with being a truck, my tire freely moves, so there's nothing holding it. And I've got that, so that's snug there. And then you can rotate that direction. And rotate it again. And I'm going to bring it back up to the top. I have that there marking where I stopped. There. This one here. And my final one here. So what I'll do here, I'll give this a nice little crank, roll it, crank, roll it, crank, And we're back to this one here. Then I'm gonna go crank, crank, and crank. Now you can, again, go over every single one, make sure everything is tight, which is a good safety thing to do. Now this is not tight enough for being back on the road. We've got to drop it back down and apply the same amount of force that I had to use to take the tire off back on. So what I'm going to do for time purposes here, because we're losing our light, again, you never know when you're going to be able to do this. We have the car back on the ground. I'm going to go tighten those lug nuts down, and after you're finished with all that stuff, take the tools that you use. If you got rags, clean them off. They can get dirty. Put them back in the car where you got them. That way you know where they are next time. Another thing I strongly emphasize is the donut tires that are in vehicles, or sometimes a full-size spare. You need to look at those tire pressures just like you check your tire pressure on your car. If you don't, you can be stuck on the side of the road with 2 flat tires and nowhere to go. You never know when you're going to be in a cell phone restricted service area, and some areas, as being a professional driver, you can go and not see a car for an hour or more. So always be prepared. Okay, now I'm going to do the safety tightening on these. As you can see, I barely put them on before. I'm going to apply pressure and I'm going to get them on tighter. And I'm going to continue my pattern on this one. That one was a little bit snugger than the other one. Sometimes they are. That's all 5 lugs. After you're done with that, go back in a circular pattern and give them a good little extra little umph push. Make sure everything was tightened properly. And that is how you go through a fluid check and a tire removal and inspection on a vehicle.